Mark Henderson walked down the same street he always did with his dog Rex. The sun was getting low in the sky, making everything look orange and gold. Rex was a big German shepherd with soft brown fur and intelligent eyes. He stayed close to Mark's left side as they walked. His collar tags made a quiet jingling sound with each step. The neighborhood was quiet that day. Most people were inside their homes cooking dinner or watching TV. Mark liked this time of day for walking Rex. There were fewer cars on the road and not many people around. Rex seemed to enjoy it too. His tail wagged slowly as he sniffed at bushes and trees along the sidewalk. Mark was not a tall man, but he had strong shoulders and arms. His black hair was cut short and neat. He wore simple clothes, just jeans and a gray shirt. Most people who saw him thought he was just another neighbor out walking his dog. They did not know about his real job. Mark worked in Hollywood making fight scenes for big action movies. He taught famous actors how to throw punches and kicks that looked real on camera. Rex stopped to sniff at a fire hydrant. Mark waited patiently, looking around the familiar street. He had lived in this area for 5 years now. The houses were all similar. Single-story homes with small front yards and driveways. Some had flowers growing in gardens. Others had children's toys scattered on the grass. It was a peaceful place where nothing exciting usually happened. As they continued walking, Mark thought about his workday. He had spent hours at the movie studio teaching a young actor how to do a complicated fight scene. The actor kept making mistakes, and Mark had to show him the moves over and over again. It was tiring work, but Mark loved it. He had been doing this job for 15 years and still enjoyed every day. Rex suddenly stopped walking and his ears went up. Mark heard it too. The sound of motorcycles coming closer. The engines were very loud, echoing between the houses. Mark gently pulled Rex closer to him and moved to the edge of the sidewalk. He wanted to give the motorcycles plenty of room to pass by. 3 bikers came around the corner riding big black motorcycles. They wore leather jackets with patches on the back. Their helmets were small and did not cover their faces. The bikes made so much noise that windows in nearby houses vibrated. The riders were laughing and shouting to each other as they rode. Mark recognized them. They were part of a local motorcycle gang that often rode through this neighborhood. Usually they just made noise and bothered people, but did not cause real trouble. Mark did not like them, but he never said anything. He preferred to mind his own business and avoid problems. The lead biker was a large man with a gray beard. His motorcycle was the biggest and loudest of the 3. When he saw Mark and Rex on the sidewalk, something changed in his face. He got a mean look in his eyes and steered his motorcycle toward them. The engine roared even louder as he came closer. Rex pressed against Mark's leg, clearly frightened by the noise and the big machine coming at them. His body was tense and his tail went down between his legs. Mark put his hand on Rex's head to calm him, but kept his eyes on the approaching biker. Something was about to happen, and Mark could feel it in the air. The peaceful evening walk was about to change in a way neither Mark nor Rex expected. The lead biker steered his motorcycle directly toward Rex, making the dog jump backward in fear. His friends followed behind him, laughing at what they thought was a funny joke. The gray-bearded man circled back around, enjoying the way Rex cowered against Mark's leg. The dog was shaking now, his eyes wide with terror, as the loud engines surrounded them on the quiet street. Mark tried to stay calm, but his hands were getting tight. He had dealt with bullies before in his life, and he hated people who picked on those who could not defend themselves. Rex was just an innocent dog who had done nothing wrong. These men were being cruel for no reason except their own entertainment. Mark took a deep breath and tried to move Rex away from the street, but the bikers kept following them. The second time the lead biker came around, he did something even worse. As he passed by Mark and Rex, he stuck out his heavy black boot and kicked Rex hard in the ribs. The impact made a dull thud sound, and Rex cried out in pain. The dog stumbled sideways, almost falling down. His cry was high-pitched and hurt to hear. The bikers burst into laughter, thinking this was the funniest thing they had ever done. Mark felt something snap inside him like a rubber band breaking. He had trained for years to control his anger and use his fighting skills only when necessary. But seeing his loyal dog get hurt by these cowards made his blood boil. Rex was limping now, favoring his right side where the boot had struck him. The dog looked up at Mark with confused eyes, not understanding why someone would hurt him. An older woman came out of her house having heard the commotion. She was Mark's neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, who always waved when she saw him walking Rex. Her face showed shock when she saw Rex limping and the bikers still circling around. She hurried over to where Mark stood, his jaw clenched tight with controlled rage. She had seen that look before on soldiers and knew it meant trouble was coming. Mark knelt down beside Rex, running his hands gently over the dog's ribs. He could feel Rex breathing hard, but nothing seemed to be broken. Still, the kick had been hard enough to cause real pain. Mark's fingers found the exact spot where the boot had hit and Rex whimpered softly. The bikers had stopped at a red light just 1 block away, still laughing and congratulating each other. Standing up slowly, Mark handed Rex's leash to Mrs. Patterson. His voice was calm but cold when he spoke. "Please watch him for a minute," he said. The old woman took the leash without question. She could see the storm building in Mark's eyes and knew better than to argue. Rex tried to follow Mark, but Mrs. Patterson held him back, speaking soft words to calm him. Mark started walking toward the bikers with steady steps. His shoulders were relaxed, but there was something dangerous in the way he moved. Years of martial arts training showed in his balanced walk. Every step was measured and purposeful. People who saw him coming knew this was not just an angry dog owner. This was someone who knew exactly what he was doing. The bikers were still at the red light, revving their engines and making noise. They had not noticed Mark approaching yet. Their attention was on each other as they joked about the scared dog. The leader was saying something about how all pet owners were weak people who treated animals like babies. His friends agreed loudly, not knowing they were about to learn a very hard lesson. Cars passing by began to slow down. Some drivers could sense that something was about to happen. A few people on the sidewalk stopped walking to watch. Even though Mark was just one man walking calmly toward 3 bikers on motorcycles, there was something about him that made people pay attention. The air felt electric, like right before a thunderstorm. Everyone could feel that this quiet street was about to see something unexpected. The bikers finally noticed Mark approaching in their side mirrors. The leader turned on his motorcycle seat to face him with a big smile that showed yellow teeth. He was not worried about one man walking toward him and his friends. After all, they were 3 tough bikers with heavy motorcycles, and he was just some guy with a dog. The leader felt confident and safe in his leather jacket, surrounded by his gang. "Hey, look boys, the dog lover wants to talk," the leader called out to his friends. They all turned to watch Mark getting closer. One of them revved his engine loud to show he was not scared. The 3rd biker lit a cigarette, acting bored, like this was nothing important. They were used to people being afraid of them, and thought this would be just another person who would back down when faced with 3 angry bikers. Mark stopped about 10 feet away from them. His stance looked relaxed, but anyone who knew about fighting would see he was perfectly balanced and ready to move in any direction. His hands hung loose at his sides, but his fingers were slightly curled. His breathing was slow and controlled, even though his heart was beating fast, with controlled anger about what they had done to Rex. "You kicked my dog," Mark said in a voice that was quiet but carried clearly to all 3 bikers. There was no emotion in his tone, just a simple statement of fact. The leader laughed loudly and revved his engine again. The sound echoed off the buildings, making it seem even louder than it was. He clearly enjoyed making noise and showing off his power. "So what if I did?" the leader said, still smiling. "Maybe you should train your mutt better. Keep him out of the way of real men." His friends laughed at this, thinking their leader was very clever. They had no idea who they were dealing with. To them, Mark was just another suburban man who would complain a little then go home. They had done this kind of thing before, and nobody ever stood up to them. The traffic light was still red, giving Mark time to study the 3 men. The leader was the biggest problem, with his gray beard and mean eyes. The second biker was younger and looked nervous now that Mark was so close. The third one with the cigarette was trying to look tough, but kept glancing at his friends for support. Mark had faced much worse opponents in his life, and these three did not worry him at all. "I want an apology," Mark said calmly, "and I want you to promise never to hurt an innocent animal again." The bikers looked at each other in disbelief, then burst out laughing. The leader slapped his motorcycle seat, finding this incredibly funny. Who did this guy think he was demanding apologies from them? They were the ones people apologized to, not the other way around. The light turned green, but the bikers did not move. Cars behind them started honking, but the leader held up his hand to stop his friends from leaving. He wanted to deal with this annoying man first. Swinging his leg over his motorcycle, he stood up to his full height. He was taller than Mark, and much heavier, with a big belly pushing against his leather jacket. His friends also got off their bikes, ready to support their leader. "Listen here, tough guy," the leader said, stepping closer to Mark. "Nobody tells us what to do, and nobody gets apologies from us. Now get lost before we decide to kick you like we kick your stupid dog." He cracked his knuckles, making a popping sound that was meant to be threatening. His breath smelled like beer and cigarettes as he leaned toward Mark. Mark did not move back or show any fear. Instead, he did something that surprised everyone watching. In one smooth motion, faster than anyone expected, he reached out and turned off the leader's motorcycle. His hand moved so quick it was like a blur. Then, before the biker could react, Mark grabbed the key from the ignition and put it in his own pocket. The motorcycle engine died immediately, leaving sudden silence on the street. The silence after the motorcycle engine died was shocking. Everyone stood frozen for a moment, not believing what had just happened. The leader's face turned bright red as he realized this smaller man had just taken his motorcycle key. His friends looked confused, unsure what to do. Nobody had ever dared to touch their bikes before. These machines were their pride and joy, and someone touching them was the worst insult possible. "You just made the biggest mistake of your life," the leader growled through clenched teeth. His hands were shaking with rage as he stepped closer to Mark. The other two bikers moved to surround Mark, making a triangle formation. They had done this before when fighting and thought 3 against 1 would be easy. People watching from the sidewalk pulled out their phones to record what they thought would be a brutal beating. Mark stayed perfectly calm as the bikers circled him. His breathing remained steady, and his eyes tracked all 3 men at once. Years of training had taught him to watch everything around him during a fight. He could see the leader was angry and would attack first. The younger biker to his left was scared but would follow his leader. The third one with the cigarette was hanging back, waiting to see what happened. "Give me back my key right now," the leader demanded, stepping even closer. His fists were clenched and raised, ready to throw a punch. Mark could smell the leather of his jacket mixed with sweat and anger. But Mark did not move or speak. He just watched and waited, knowing the first attack was coming soon. His body was relaxed but ready, like a spring waiting to release. The leader lost patience and threw a big wild punch at Mark's face. It was a haymaker punch with all his weight behind it, meant to knock Mark down with one hit. But Mark was not there when the fist arrived. He had stepped slightly to the side, letting the punch go past his ear. The leader stumbled forward, off balance from missing his target. His friends watched in shock as their tough leader swung at empty air. Before the leader could recover, Mark moved. His hand shot out, hitting the biker in the stomach with precise force. It was not a brutal strike, but perfectly placed to knock the wind out of him. The leader doubled over, gasping for breath, his face turning from red to purple. He dropped to one knee, holding his stomach, unable to breathe properly. The cigarette fell from the third biker's mouth as he watched his leader go down so easily. The younger biker on the left decided to help his leader. He rushed at Mark with both hands, reaching out to grab him. This was a mistake because it left him completely open to counterattack. Mark grabbed the biker's wrist and used his own momentum to flip him over. The young man went flying through the air and landed hard on his back on the pavement. The impact knocked all the air from his lungs, and he lay there groaning, unable to get up. Now only the third biker remained standing. He looked at his two friends on the ground, then at Mark, who had barely moved from his original spot. The man threw away his cigarette and reached into his jacket, pulling out a length of chain. He started swinging it over his head, making a whooshing sound as the metal links cut through the air. This was his favorite weapon, and he had hurt many people with it before. Mark watched the chain, carefully timing its rotation. He knew exactly how dangerous a chain could be in a fight, but he also knew its weakness. When the biker swung the chain at him, Mark stepped inside its arc where it had no power. His hand caught the chain near the handle and yanked hard. The biker stumbled forward off balance, and Mark swept his legs, dropping him to the ground. The chain clattered onto the pavement out of reach. In less than 30 seconds, all three bikers were on the ground. The leader was still gasping for breath. The young one was holding his back in pain. The third was trying to crawl away from Mark, who stood calmly in the middle. None of them were seriously hurt, but they were completely defeated. The people watching could not believe one man had beaten three bikers so easily. Some were even clapping and cheering for Mark. Mark stood quietly looking down at the three bikers sprawled on the pavement. They were all conscious but clearly beaten. The leader was finally catching his breath, but stayed on his knees, not wanting to stand up again. The younger biker was sitting up, slowly rubbing his sore back. The third one had given up trying to crawl away and just lay still, watching Mark with fearful eyes. The street was full of people now. Many had come out of their houses after hearing the commotion. Cars had stopped and drivers were watching through their windows. Everyone had their phones out, recording the aftermath of the quick fight. They whispered to each other, amazed that one man had defeated three tough bikers without breaking a sweat. Some recognized Mark as the quiet neighbor who walked his dog every day. Mark reached into his pocket and pulled out the motorcycle key. He looked at it for a moment, then dropped it on the ground next to the leader's head. The metal key made a small clinking sound as it hit the pavement. The leader looked at it, but did not move to pick it up. His pride was hurt worse than his body, and he could not meet Mark's eyes anymore. "Next time you want to hurt an innocent animal, remember this moment," Mark said quietly but firmly. His voice carried to everyone watching, making them lean in to hear better. "Violence against those who cannot defend themselves is the act of a coward. Today you learned what happens when you pick on the wrong dog and the wrong owner. Be grateful I showed restraint." The leader finally looked up at Mark, his face no longer red with anger, but pale with embarrassment. Dozens of people had seen him get beaten easily by a smaller man. His reputation as a tough biker was ruined. He could see people filming with their phones and knew this humiliation would be all over social media by tomorrow. His shoulders sagged in defeat as the reality sank in. "Who are you, man?" the younger biker asked from where he sat on the ground. There was genuine curiosity in his voice, mixed with fear and respect. He had never seen anyone move like Mark did during the fight. The speed and precision were unlike any street fighter he had encountered. This was someone with real training, not just barroom brawling experience. Mark looked at the young man and considered his answer. He could have bragged about his Hollywood job or his years of martial arts training. He could have mentioned teaching combat techniques to Navy SEALs or working with famous action stars. But instead, he kept it simple. "I'm just a man who loves his dog," Mark said, then turned and walked away. The bikers slowly got to their feet, helping each other up. The leader picked up his key with shaking hands and got back on his motorcycle. They started their engines, but the sound seemed quieter now, less intimidating than before. As they drove away, none of them looked back. They kept their heads down and rode slowly, careful not to rev their engines or make any noise. Mark walked back to where Mrs. Patterson stood with Rex. The dog was wagging his tail excitedly, having watched his owner defend him. When Mark knelt down, Rex licked his face enthusiastically, showing no signs of lasting injury from the kick. Mrs. Patterson handed back the leash with a small smile on her wrinkled face. She had lived through wars and seen real fighters before and recognized one in Mark. "That was quite something," she said, patting Mark's shoulder. "Those boys have been causing trouble around here for months. Maybe now they'll think twice before bullying people." Other neighbors came over to shake Mark's hand and thank him. They had all been afraid of the bikers, but were too scared to do anything. Seeing them defeated so easily gave everyone hope that the neighborhood could be peaceful again. Mark just nodded politely, wanting to get Rex home to check him over properly. As they walked away, he could hear people talking excitedly about what they had witnessed. Someone said they were posting the video online already. Another person mentioned calling the police to report the bikers for animal cruelty. But Mark did not care about any of that. He just wanted to make sure Rex was really okay. By the time Mark got home with Rex, the sun had completely set. The street lights were on, casting yellow circles on the sidewalk. Rex seemed to be walking normally now with no sign of a limp. But Mark wanted to check him thoroughly to make sure there was no hidden injury. He led the dog into his small house and turned on the living room lights, making the space warm and welcoming. Mark's house was simple but neat. The living room had a comfortable couch and a big TV on the wall. There were framed movie posters from films he had worked on as a stunt coordinator. In one corner was a bookshelf filled with martial arts books and DVDs. The coffee table had a few magazines about dogs, showing how much Mark cared about Rex. Everything was organized and clean, just like Mark liked it. Rex went straight to his water bowl and drank deeply. The excitement of the evening had made him thirsty. Mark got the first aid kit from the bathroom and sat on the floor next to Rex. Gently, he ran his hands over the dog's ribs where the kick had landed. Rex stood still, letting Mark examine him. There was a slight swelling, but nothing seemed broken. The dog only flinched a little when Mark pressed the tender spot. Satisfied that Rex was not seriously hurt, Mark gave him a special treat from the kitchen. It was a large bone that Rex only got on special occasions. The dog took it happily and settled on his bed in the corner to chew on it. His tail was wagging, showing he had already forgotten about the scary bikers. Dogs were good at living in the moment and not holding grudges. Mark's phone started buzzing with messages. He picked it up and saw dozens of notifications. Some were from neighbors who had his number. Others were from social media alerts. He opened one message from a neighbor and saw a link to a video. Someone had already posted the fight online with the title "Local Man Defeats 3 Bikers Who Kicked His Dog." The view count was climbing rapidly. Curious, Mark clicked on the video and watched himself fight the bikers. It was strange seeing it from an outside perspective. The person filming had caught everything clearly. Mark could see how smooth and controlled his movements were compared to the wild swings of the bikers. In slow motion, his strikes looked like something from one of his choreographed movie fights. The comments below the video were all supporting him. His phone rang and Mark saw it was his boss from the movie studio. Word traveled fast in Hollywood, especially when one of their stunt coordinators was in a viral video. Mark answered, expecting questions or concerns about the fight. But his boss was actually excited. He had seen the video and thought it was amazing publicity for their upcoming action movie. He even joked about using the footage in their marketing. After hanging up, Mark made himself a simple dinner. He was not very hungry after all the excitement, so he just made a sandwich and sat at his small kitchen table. Rex came over and put his head on Mark's knee, looking for attention. Mark scratched behind the dog's ears the way Rex liked it. They sat quietly together, both glad the other was safe and unharmed. Around 9 o'clock, there was a knock at the door. Mark opened it to find a police officer standing on his porch. The officer was young and looked a little nervous. He explained that someone had reported the incident with the bikers, and they needed Mark's statement. Mark invited him in and told the whole story while the officer took notes. Rex stayed close to Mark the entire time, as if protecting him. The officer said several witnesses had already given statements, all supporting Mark's version of events. The video evidence clearly showed the bikers as the aggressors who attacked first. The officer mentioned that animal cruelty charges might be filed against the biker who kicked Rex. He took some pictures of Rex's slightly swollen ribs for evidence, then thanked Mark for his cooperation. After the officer left, Mark finally relaxed on his couch. Rex jumped up next to him, even though he was usually not allowed on furniture. But tonight, Mark did not mind. He put his arm around the big dog and turned on the TV. They found an old action movie that Mark had worked on years ago. As they watched, Mark pointed out the fight scenes he had choreographed. Rex seemed to enjoy the movie, his ears perking up at the loud action sounds. The next morning, Mark woke up to his phone ringing constantly. He had slept later than usual, tired from the events of the previous evening. Rex was already awake, sitting by the bedroom door waiting to go outside. Mark grabbed his phone, seeing dozens of missed calls and hundreds of messages. The video of the fight had gone completely viral overnight, spreading across social media platforms around the world. Mark let Rex out into the small backyard to do his morning business, then made himself coffee. He scrolled through some of the messages while the coffee brewed. There were interview requests from news stations, messages from old friends who recognized him, and even a few offers from martial arts schools wanting him to teach. The whole situation had exploded far beyond what Mark expected when he defended Rex. Local news vans were already parked outside his house when Mark looked through the window. Reporters were setting up cameras on the sidewalk, hoping to get an interview. Mark sighed, knowing his quiet life was temporarily over. He had never wanted fame or attention. His work in Hollywood was always behind the scenes, making other people look good in action scenes. Now suddenly, he was the one in the spotlight. Rex came back inside, and Mark fed him breakfast. The dog ate happily, unaware of all the attention they were getting. Mark decided to ignore the media circus outside and stick to their normal routine. He showered, dressed in his usual jeans and shirt, then got Rex's leash for their morning walk. They would have to face the reporters eventually, but Mark wanted to do it on his own terms. As soon as Mark opened the front door, cameras started rolling and reporters rushed forward with microphones. They all talked at once, asking questions about the fight, the bikers, and his background. Mark held up his hand for silence, and they actually stopped talking. There was something about his calm authority that made people listen. He gave a brief statement about protecting his dog and believing in standing up to bullies. One reporter asked about his fighting skills and Hollywood work. Mark kept his answer simple, explaining he was a stunt coordinator who had trained in martial arts for many years. He did not mention specific movies or actors, preferring to keep some privacy. When they asked if he would press charges against the bikers, Mark said that was up to the police and the district attorney, not him. After a few minutes of questions, Mark politely ended the interview and walked Rex past the cameras. Some reporters tried to follow but gave up after a block. Mark and Rex completed their usual morning route through the neighborhood. Many people waved and called out support. A few even stopped to pet Rex and congratulate Mark on standing up to the bikers. Everyone seemed to know about the incident already. At the local coffee shop where Mark sometimes stopped, the owner gave him free coffee and a treat for Rex. She said the bikers had been harassing customers for months, and she was glad someone finally stood up to them. Other customers came over to shake Mark's hand and share their own stories about problems with the motorcycle gang. It seemed the entire neighborhood had been living in fear of these bullies. Back home, Mark found even more interview requests on his phone. There were also messages from animal rights groups wanting to make him a spokesperson. 3 different publishing companies wanted him to write a book about the incident. A documentary filmmaker offered to make a movie about his life. The attention was overwhelming for someone who valued his privacy and quiet life. That afternoon, Mark's boss called again with interesting news. The viral video had brought huge publicity to their movie studio. Pre-sales for their upcoming action film had spiked, with people wanting to see the work of the real-life hero stunt coordinator. The studio marketing department wanted to use Mark in their promotional campaign. They offered a significant bonus if he would do a few interviews about his stunt work. Mark spent the evening thinking about all the opportunities suddenly available. The money from interviews and endorsements could be substantial, but he had never wanted to be famous. He enjoyed his behind-the-scenes work and his simple life with Rex. The dog was sleeping peacefully on his bed, completely recovered from the kick. Looking at Rex helped Mark decide what was really important to him. Over the next few days, the story continued to spread. The video had millions of views and was shown on news programs around the world. People were calling Mark a hero for defending his dog and standing up to bullies. But the attention was not all positive. Mark started getting challenges from martial artists wanting to test their skills against him. Some people accused him of using excessive force against the bikers. The bikers themselves had disappeared from the neighborhood. Their usual hangout spots were empty, and nobody had seen them riding through the streets. Word got around that they had been kicked out of their motorcycle club for bringing shame and unwanted attention. The leader especially was mocked online for being defeated so easily. Memes and jokes about the incident spread across social media, making their humiliation complete. Mark tried to return to his normal life, but it was difficult with constant media attention. He had to change his walking route with Rex to avoid reporters. His neighbors were supportive, but some clearly enjoyed the excitement his fame brought to their quiet street. Mrs. Patterson became somewhat of a celebrity herself, giving interviews about watching Mark defend Rex and holding the leash during the fight. At work, things were different too. The actors and crew members treated Mark with new respect. Everyone had seen the video and wanted to hear the story directly from him. Some actors asked for extra training, hoping to learn his real-world fighting techniques. The studio executives were thrilled with all the free publicity and wanted to feature Mark more prominently in credits and promotional materials. A week after the incident, Mark got an unexpected visitor. A young woman knocked on his door one evening, introducing herself as the sister of the younger biker. She apologized for her brother's behavior and explained he had always been easily influenced by the wrong people. Since the fight, he had quit the motorcycle gang and was looking for honest work. She wanted to thank Mark for teaching her brother a lesson without seriously hurting him. This visit made Mark think deeply about the whole situation. He had not meant to become famous or change anyone's life. He just wanted to protect Rex from bullies. But his actions had created ripple effects throughout the community. The bikers were gone, the neighborhood felt safer, and people were inspired to stand up for themselves. Even the young biker might turn his life around because of that one confrontation. Animal welfare organizations reached out wanting to use Mark and Rex as ambassadors for their causes. They offered to donate money to animal shelters if Mark would appear at their events. This appealed to Mark more than personal fame or profit. He had always loved animals, and the idea of helping shelter dogs like Rex found homes made him seriously consider the offer. Rex had been a rescue dog himself, saved from a bad situation. 3 weeks after the fight, life began to settle down. The media had moved on to new stories, and the video was old news. Mark still got recognized sometimes, but people were respectful and just wanted to pet Rex or say thank you. The neighborhood was permanently changed for the better, with no more motorcycle gangs racing through the streets or harassing residents. Children could play outside safely again. Mark decided to accept a few select opportunities that aligned with his values. He did some interviews about animal welfare and responsible pet ownership. He appeared at charity events for animal shelters, always bringing Rex, who became a bit of a celebrity dog. The money he earned from these appearances went directly to helping abandoned animals find homes. It felt good to use his unexpected fame for something meaningful. The movie studio created a special position for Mark as their senior stunt coordinator and animal safety advisor. This allowed him to ensure that animals used in films were treated properly. He also developed new training programs, teaching stunt performers not just fighting techniques, but also the philosophy of using strength to protect rather than harm. Many young stunt workers looked up to him as a mentor. Over the next few days, the story continued to spread. The video had millions of views and was shown on news programs around the world. People were calling Mark a hero for defending his dog and standing up to bullies. But the attention was not all positive. Mark started getting challenges from martial artists wanting to test their skills against him. Some people accused him of using excessive force against the bikers. The bikers themselves had disappeared from the neighborhood. Their usual hangout spots were empty, and nobody had seen them riding through the streets. Word got around that they had been kicked out of their motorcycle club for bringing shame and unwanted attention. The leader especially was mocked online for being defeated so easily. Memes and jokes about the incident spread across social media, making their humiliation complete. Mark tried to return to his normal life, but it was difficult with constant media attention. He had to change his walking route with Rex to avoid reporters. His neighbors were supportive, but some clearly enjoyed the excitement his fame brought to their quiet street. Mrs. Patterson became somewhat of a celebrity herself, giving interviews about watching Mark defend Rex and holding the leash during the fight. At work, things were different too. The actors and crew members treated Mark with new respect. Everyone had seen the video and wanted to hear the story directly from him. Some actors asked for extra training, hoping to learn his real-world fighting techniques. The studio executives were thrilled with all the free publicity and wanted to feature Mark more prominently in credits and promotional materials. A week after the incident, Mark got an unexpected visitor. A young woman knocked on his door one evening, introducing herself as the sister of the younger biker. She apologized for her brother's behavior and explained he had always been easily influenced by the wrong people. Since the fight, he had quit the motorcycle gang and was looking for honest work. She wanted to thank Mark for teaching her brother a lesson without seriously hurting him. This visit made Mark think deeply about the whole situation. He had not meant to become famous or change anyone's life. He just wanted to protect Rex from bullies. But his actions had created ripple effects throughout the community. The bikers were gone, the neighborhood felt safer, and people were inspired to stand up for themselves. Even the young biker might turn his life around because of that one confrontation. Animal welfare organizations reached out wanting to use Mark and Rex as ambassadors for their causes. They offered to donate money to animal shelters if Mark would appear at their events. This appealed to Mark more than personal fame or profit. He had always loved animals, and the idea of helping shelter dogs like Rex found homes made him seriously consider the offer. Rex had been a rescue dog himself, saved from a bad situation. 3 weeks after the fight, life began to settle down. The media had moved on to new stories, and the video was old news. Mark still got recognized sometimes, but people were respectful and just wanted to pet Rex or say thank you. The neighborhood was permanently changed for the better, with no more motorcycle gangs racing through the streets or harassing residents. Children could play outside safely again. Mark decided to accept a few select opportunities that aligned with his values. He did some interviews about animal welfare and responsible pet ownership. He appeared at charity events for animal shelters, always bringing Rex, who became a bit of a celebrity dog. The money he earned from these appearances went directly to helping abandoned animals find homes. It felt good to use his unexpected fame for something meaningful. The movie studio created a special position for Mark as their senior stunt coordinator and animal safety advisor. This allowed him to ensure that animals used in films were treated properly. He also developed new training programs, teaching stunt performers not just fighting techniques, but also the philosophy of using strength to protect rather than harm. Many young stunt workers looked up to him as a mentor.